Amen. Good morning, y'all. My name's Will. I'm one of the pastors here. We asked we asked last week, what is the right amount of snow? And the answer for me is 0 if it falls on a Sunday morning. So again, we are together and preaching on gratitude, and it's if God is like, watch this. Like, if you want to talk about how you have to practice being grateful, here you go. Because I have spent all week doing the incredibly fruitful thing of just staring at my phone, at the weather app on my phone, as if I have any power or control over anything, or as if what they say on Tuesday is somehow going to be accurate on Sunday. And then just constantly, even yesterday, being like, what's going to happen? I feel like God is up there going like, watch this. There he goes again. Look at him. Like he's not learning anything. So maybe we can take some not learning about gratitude and do some learning here together this morning, because the truth is we have everything to be grateful for, and simultaneously sometimes it's hard to be grateful. And so we've talked in this series about this idea of gratitude is at the heart of not just the language we use when we celebrate communion, but the heart of what I think the New Testament invites us to do and be. There's a couple words we've looked at in this series so far that are closely tied to communion. One is Eucharisteo. You can see the word Eucharist in there. If you've grown up in a Catholic church or a church that called communion the Eucharist, it's a word that really means give thanks. New Testament originally written in Greek. It's a word that means give thanks. The word shows up when we talk about communion to say, on the night he was betrayed, Jesus took bread, gave thanks. It's a verb, Eucharisteo, but literally it means good grace, and it ties to this idea of a gift. So for us, it's this idea that we are called and invited to give thanks. Maybe not for a Sunday morning snow, but in a Sunday morning. So to give thanks for technology that allows us to be present live in the living room last week, or for you to be watching on YouTube or listening on our podcast maybe this morning. And for all of you fine human beings who came to this room today with snow in your hair, thanks be to God for you. Truly, like, thanks be to God for you. We'll see what happens at 11 a.m. It may just be us talking to ourselves. We'll see. But in any situation, we are called to give thanks because there's grace. Grace is good. And that enables us to be open and giving thanks and everything. And then last week we were shared on this other word that Eucharisteo shows up in the communion language in 1 Corinthians 11. In 1 Corinthians 10, we call communion because the King James, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, first translated into English this idea that what we do is a sharing or a partnership, but the King James translated it as communion. The Greek word is koinonia, this idea that we share together, we commune together, not just when we take the body and blood of Christ, but this idea that the best way to give thanks is in communion. So not just who are we thankful for in our lives, but who are we thankful with? Who can we share gratitude with? Who will not just celebrate us, but be grateful with us? Who will we not just celebrate, but be grateful with? Because that keeps us all oriented in the right way, that the whole idea here is that not that we're so great and awesome and all those other things by ourselves, but that we've been given everything. And so we have every reason and every opportunity to be grateful. So those two words in this series come in language in 1 Corinthians 10 and 1 Corinthians 11. In between them, in 1 Corinthians 10, there is a specific example that Paul uses to talk to this church in Corinth, this first century church in Corinth, about how this idea plays out. I'm going to show you the start of this in the Message this morning. This is Eugene Peterson's contemporary paraphrase. It's about 30 years old now, but this is what Paul talks about as an example because of grace that is good, because of the sharing. 1 Corinthians 10, he says this. Looking at it one way, you could say, well, look, anything goes because of God's immense generosity and grace. Like, we don't have to dissect and scrutinize every action to see if it will pass muster. But the point is not just to get by. We want to live well. But our foremost efforts should be to help others live well. So Paul, who writes this here in Romans and lots of other places, he talks often about this idea of because grace is so good, because we've been forgiven and set free, how now shall we live? And he always, and I think we always, try to strike the balance between two extremes. On the one end is this anything goes idea, right? To say, well, I've got grace, I've got forgiveness, let's party, baby. Like, I could do anything I want. God's going to forgive me and set free. I'm going to heaven when I die. Anything goes, and I should just live it up and enjoy. And Paul is always careful to say, and we are always careful to say, that's not the point of grace, for you to just go and do anything you want because you know you'll be forgiven for it. But also on the other end of the spectrum, even when if hedonism is over here, legalism still lives over here and can be just as much of a threat to our own discipleship. Even though we have grace and are set free, there can still be a part of us that says, well, I've got to scrutinize every single decision I make and make sure I'm doing it exactly right. When I was a kid, when I was in youth in high school growing up in church, this was a big part of my faith. I don't think the youth group I was in intentionally tried to make me this way or make us this way, but it was a very what is the will of God for your life right now? What is the will of God for your life at 10:07 a.m. on Sunday, January 19th? I would find myself, I would pull up to a drive-through window at a restaurant and be like, should I pray? Like, God, tell me what to order. God be like, the number 2 with cheese. Because I knew, I understood, right? We wouldn't say that grace is well, I've got grace. Give me the number 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, large with 6 Frosties and all that stuff. But this over here is not, it's just bad. It's unhealthy in a different way. To say, is every moment God looking at my life and saying, you better get this exactly right. I'm sorry, in this moment, you only got it 97% right, so you're in trouble today. All these moments when you stared at the radar on your phone 4 days out, you got none of that right, so now you're deep in trouble. There's these two extremes, and Paul, throughout the New Testament, says, that's not the point of grace, but this isn't the point of grace either. There's freedom in how we live and move and experience this thing as a gift in our lives. And so for that culture and context, he goes on to give them a very specific example. This is a few verses later in verse 27. This again is the message. If a non-believer invites you to dinner and you feel like going, go ahead and enjoy yourself. I like this verse because it leaves space to say, I don't feel like going. I don't want to go, so I'm off the hook on this one. If a non-believer invites you to dinner and you feel like going, go ahead, enjoy yourself, eat everything placed before you. Again, freedom to say, I definitely don't feel like eating everything placed before me because I'm very picky, so I'm just not going to go. It would be both bad manners and bad spirituality to cross-examine your host on the ethical purity of each course as it is served. So the idea here is, again, Christianity brand new when this is being written. Lots of other religions, lots of other gods, lots of other things, especially in a town, in a city like Corinth. So there was this idea that if I'm a Christian and I'm going to go, a non-believer invites me to their house, and I'm going to sit down and eat, there's no atheism in this world. Everybody believes in something, everybody's worshiping something, everybody's got religion and gods or whatever. And so for those first Christians, it was a real thing to say, when I go to someone's house and they're not a Christian, but they're following this god or goddess, if this dish has been sacrificed in the name of whoever, should I eat it? Am I in sin when I eat it? A lot of what Paul's getting at here is, am I in sin when I eat it accidentally? If I didn't know it was sacrificed to this, that, or the other, but if I had prayed at that particular drive-through window and God said, don't eat that, then how am I experiencing all that? How am I scrutinizing all that? Paul says, if you want to go and enjoy yourself and eat everything that's placed before you, and don't feel the need to cross-examine your host and say, wait, is this kosher? Which was a big thing for a religion like ours that came out of Judaism. But on the other hand, he says, if the host goes out of his way to tell you that this or that was sacrificed to God or goddess so-and-so, you should pass. even though you may be indifferent as to where it came from, even though you are free in these ways because we serve the one true God and all that stuff, even if you're indifferent as to where it came from, he's not, the host is not. And you don't want to send mixed messages to him about who you are worshiping. I always like to say, one of the ways I believe Christianity is true is because of how hard it is. That if human beings made up a religion, we would have come up with something easier than this. Easier than forgiveness, easier than, and easier, the easiest thing to do is to go to this extreme or that extreme. So the easiest thing to do is either to say, look, eat it all, doesn't matter, who cares, even if they tell you just eat it, whatever, it's probably good, eat it. Or, don't even go to their house, right? Don't associate with those people. They're not Jesus people, don't do that. The harder thing is the middle, where you cultivate a relationship with a non-believer. You cultivate relationships with people you are in their lives and care about them and love them. And yeah, if it's put before you, sure, eat it, you're not in sin. But if the person makes a big deal to say, this course was sacrificed to this god or goddess, then it is on you to say, okay, thanks for telling me that. I don't want to, I want to be clear about who I am and who I'm following, so I'm going to step back from that. Can I have a peanut butter and jelly, right, instead? That sort of thing. The harder thing is the extremes are easy. They don't require a lot of us. The harder thing is in the middle. And that's often what Christianity helps and asks us to be. Now, I joke about this stuff with food all the time, but like those who know me or perhaps who have been to a restaurant with me know, like truly, I'm a embarrassingly picky eater. I'm not very exciting. If you ask me to go to restaurants, we're going to go to meat and potatoes places, which is great because there's lots of great meat and potatoes places in this town. But like, I'm not deeply exciting. When I was younger, before I was married to Alex, who used to be a cake decorator and all this, I was even worse than this. And before I was married to Alex, I went to Haiti a couple of times. Once before I'd even met her in 2011, right after the earthquake, and then another time when we were engaged in 2013. Like a lot of people, I had to be talked into going to Haiti over a number of years, and a number of like, well, that sounds like something I should do later, and later, and later, and then eventually, people who cared about me were like, well, when is that exactly going to happen in your life? And so I went in 2011. I went with a group out of my home church that had a fair number of cowboys in it. And these guys who led the trip liked to go to the most remote places in Haiti they could find. They liked to go to places where Christians didn't necessarily bother to show up, people that were outside kind of the realm of Port-au-Prince and other things and that sort of stuff. So we went to a lot of villages like this. This place is called Bate 41. Bate means village in Creole. Places that were so remote that they didn't have a name. They just had a number. That's Village 41 and that sort of stuff. The first night that we were in Haiti, when we were in Port-au-Prince after landing in the airport, we had this chef come in and cook for us, and it was really great. It was like this citrus chicken and French fries, which told me I'm going to be safe here in this country, and all these other things, and I feel like it was an incredible trick, where like on the first day they tell you it's going to be this, and then all the other days it's nothing but plantains, which is a close cousin of bananas, which is my least favorite thing in the whole world. So, again, whenever people ask, what advice do you have on going on an international mission trip? A loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter. You can survive anywhere on that. But we went to these deeply, deeply remote kinds of places. We went one place where it was an abandoned school, and they had, we went and spent like 3 nights there. We were doing vacation Bible school. We were doing medical mission, that sort of stuff. And we stayed in this school that no one had seen ahead of time. They just said, do you have a place where you can stay? And they said, yes. And so we showed up, and it was no electricity, no running water. There were, in the old classrooms, they had put in what are essentially concrete slabs. And I thought, well, why? Like, we could have just slept on the floor. And they said, no, there's rats and all that good stuff. And so we were in this kind of room with like 6 concrete slabs asleep. It's 1,000 degrees. We couldn't keep the windows open because some of our local Haitian friends had not, had the same malaria medication we had or whatever. And there's no electricity. I woke up in the middle of the night in this place, and it was pitch black and 1,000 degrees. And I thought, is this hell? Like, did I get this wrong? Like, if I died and gone to the wrong place? So, like, deeply, deeply out of my comfort zone, deeply remote and all this stuff. And what you would also find there is, we talk about gratitude. We would bring them water, just water. The places that could have used, some of our friends at Tiva that work in Guatemala, where they could have used a filter and a well and all that sort of stuff. None of that existed in these sorts of places. So we would just bring them, jugs of water that, were lukewarm water in a jug. And we would have to have real conversations about our distribution method so that it didn't cause a riot over water. Just water. The way it impacted and incorporated gratitude in my life was meaningful and powerful. In this particular place, when we told them we were coming, we told them we were bringing water and all this other stuff, they were grateful and they wanted to celebrate us. And so they came back and told through our guide and our translators that they wanted to sacrifice and serve a goat in our honor. And again, like, look around. There's no running water. There's nothing about eating a goat that's been sacrificed that's particularly appealing to me, or a goat that's not been sacrificed that's particularly appealing to me. But I mean, all of us are like, we can't eat, like, that goat will kill us. Like, we can't eat this food. Back then, again, remember, this is 12 to 15 years ago, technology very different, all that stuff. We'd get a little pocket of internet and just send emails home that were like, we are here and alive. Please pray we don't have to eat this goat. Like, people back home are like, what is happening and what is going on in this space? They were deeply grateful for us, but we were less grateful for them in that space. Somehow, the cowboys who led this trip were eloquent enough because we didn't want to offend them, We wanted to maintain the relationship. I don't remember how I wasn't high enough on the food chain, but we got out of it somehow. We got out of having to eat the goat. But I thought about this passage, right, of like, what can we be thankful for? And we don't want to just say, yeah, let's just do anything and whatever, and we don't want to overly scrutinize and all this other stuff, and we definitely want to say, hey, what's not going to make me sick and all of that. But, like, is there a space to say, in the choices we make in our lives, more than what we get at the drive-through window and all that stuff, is there a connective tissue point here to say, more than having to scrutinize every single thing, and certainly more than having to say, look, I can do anything, I've got grace, it's fine, I'm free, I can do and eat and partake in absolutely anything I want. I always think you and me, we work better when we can do something out of a positive instead of do something out of a negative. That the church functions better when we operate on what it is that we were told to say yes to, more than what it is that we were told to say no to. Though we are told to say no to plenty, and it's real and meaningful and powerful, and there's two good extremes we're told to say no to here. Maybe a good filter for us when we're scrutinizing these choices in our lives or thinking through these choices in our lives is, can I be grateful for this? When we face choices in our everyday lives, situations, relationships, things at work, things where we're trying to untangle a potentially complicated situation, and we're praying, but God is not clear, or Scripture may not be clear, and we're trying to figure out, what do I do here? Do I take advantage of this? Do I partake of this? Do I abstain from this? How do I figure it out? Maybe for us, there's an opportunity to filter all of that through this same lens of gratitude. To say, like, can I be grateful for this? This whole passage, the 1 Corinthians passage, ends this way. This is back in a traditional text in the New Revised Standard Version. That whole passage ends with, look, whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. So these things that we're considering doing, there's this question Paul puts to us to say, can I do it to the glory of God? Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I not do this? Can I do it to the glory of God? The glory of God in Greek is Doxa, Theos. Doxa means glory. Theos means God. We sang it. I didn't even know we were going to do it. Jessica put the doxology at the end of the last song that we sang. Think about the Greek word logos. Jesus is the Word. In the beginning was the Word. Logos in English is it's where we get in part the ology that comes on the end of things, the study of things, the words of things. So the doxology in a church, praise God from whom all blessings flow, etc., is like the words of glory. Theology is the study of God. Doxa, Theos is the glory of God. In whatever we're facing, in whatever decisions we're trying to make, choices, all these kinds of things, there's this idea that we're called in everything to be grateful because we've been given a good gift, to be grateful together, koinonia in a sharing, and then in all these things, everything we do, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. When we face these choices in our lives, can I do it to the glory of God? And maybe that through the lens of, can I be grateful for this? That verse, that 1 Corinthians verse, is out there on the wall out there in church, and I've walked by it a million times and never really seen or thought about it. And we saw it this week of like that idea is central to who this church is and who our lives are meant to be. I think when we talk about koinonia, to talk about our people, if you're struggling with a decision, if you're finding something maybe to be, if you're finding something to be less black and white and more gray in your life, or you don't know exactly what to do, a good filter to run it through is, can I be grateful for this? If I was to do X, could I be grateful for it? Or would I feel ashamed and embarrassed and want to be quiet about it? And not just can I be grateful for it, but would my koinonia, would my people be grateful for it? If I went to my people that I am not just grateful for, but grateful with, and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, or I'm thinking about not doing this, would they be grateful for it? Do we have people in our lives who will do more than just tell us, look, man, whatever you want to do, it's cool, and also do more than say, like, I don't know, you need to pray about that for 17 years before you make a decision? Can I be grateful for this? And would my people be grateful for this? All these things run back through this lens and language together. That gratitude, sometimes gratitude is hard. Sometimes life is hard. Sometimes choices are complicated. But much more meaningful and much more difficult for us than just saying, do whatever you want, or absolutely be paralyzed by scrutinizing absolutely every single decision at every single breath and every single moment and live unsure of what you're supposed to do in every beat. We're called to give thanks, Eucharisteo. We're called to give thanks for the good gift of grace that's been given to us. And the best way to give thanks is in communion, koinonia, that we share together in our gratitude in our life. And everything we do, whether we eat or drink, or whatever we do or don't do, we're called to do it for the glory of God. When we find ourselves in difficult situations that are hard to unpack, can I be grateful for it? Can I give thanks for that thing? Could I Eucharisteo for it? Would my koinonia, would my people, would they be grateful for it too? And if the answer is no, then maybe it's worth considering doing that thing, or perhaps not doing that thing together. Your day, your life, my January, even if it snows every daggum Sunday, your life, you need grace, man. Good Lord, I need it. And that's the good news. It's right here. Has been for 2,000 years. Still going strong. So yeah, no matter what it looks like when we open those doors in a minute, give thanks. And we do that best together. and believe that grace is not just here to say, do whatever you want, or wait, you got to think about that for 1,500 minutes every single day, every single moment, but to live well, but to also ensure that we're helping others live well. And the best way we do all of that is together. And that's the good news about grace too, and about koinonia too, and living for the glory of God, is in all those things in every season. Man, we get a chance to do that together every single day.